Taking a live look at Cygnus as it approaches the 250-meter hold point, now just about 268 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in on that 250-meter hold point. Again, this is just one of the holds just outside the keep-out sphere and is one of the milestones designed into Cygnus approach. Once Cygnus reaches that 250-meter hold, teams will run a series of checks and a go, no-go poll from flight controllers before Cygnus departs that 250-meter hold for the next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. And that'll be the last milestone to make sure all systems are a go before Cygnus gets about 10 to 12 meters away from the station for capture. Now about 3.5 minutes away from that 250-meter hold arrival. When Cygnus arrives to the capture point this morning, NASA astronaut Drew Morgan will capture the spacecraft with the station's Canadarm2 robotic arm, backed up by Jessica Meir of NASA. Following that, the controls of the robotic arm will be handed over to robotics officers on the ground, who will then bring Cygnus closer into the station for installation later this morning. Cygnus is now 258 meters from the International Space Station, again standing by for that 250-meter hold point. Cygnus is now 254 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, we're just waiting for Cygnus to reach that 250-meter hold point. Once Cygnus reaches that hold, we'll hear confirmation from the Capcom here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room that Cygnus is holding steady. Cygnus is now 253 meters out.
Station Houston on 2 for Cygnus. Confirm Cygnus 250-meter hold per step 2 and 1.102.
Station copies.
As you just heard, that was Steven Zenter, the Capcom here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, calling up to Drew Morgan and Jessica Meir, confirming that Cygnus is now holding steady at 250 meters.
Houston Station on 2 for Cygnus in Block 2. The command panel LED status is nominal. High range is 252.37. In Monitor 1, the light is inside the corridor. The vehicle size matches the outline. The light is about half of a vehicle width starboard of the circle. The circle is the same, about half a vehicle width starboard of the center of the corridor. In Monitor 3, the light is inside the corridor. The vehicle size matches the outline. The light is, again, about half of a vehicle width starboard of the circle, and the circle is about half of a vehicle width starboard of the center of the corridor.
All right, Jessica, that is a good report. Thank you.
And we're in a short handover period between satellites right now, but we should be regaining those communications here shortly. Cygnus is now at that 250-meter hold point. The next milestone after the 250-meter hold is when Cygnus will cross the keep-out sphere, which is an imaginary sphere around the International Space Station. After crossing the keep-out sphere, Cygnus will start approaching the 30-meter hold arrival, and that'll be the last milestone to make sure all systems are a go before Cygnus gets about 10 to 20 meters from the space station for capture this morning. Again, Cygnus is now in that hold at 250 meters. The next milestone after the 250-meter hold is when Cygnus will cross the keep-out sphere. And after crossing the keep-out sphere, Cygnus will start approaching the 30-meter hold arrival, and that'll be the last milestone to make sure all systems are a go before Cygnus gets 10 to 12 meters away from the station for capture this morning. When Cygnus arrives to that capture hold point this morning, Drew Morgan will capture the spacecraft with the station's robotic arm, backed up by Jessica Meir. And following that, the controls of the robotic arm will be handed over to robotics officers here on the ground, who will then bring Cygnus closer to the station for installation later this morning. And Cygnus is still holding steady at that 250-meter hold point. Flight controllers here around the room will conduct a go, no-go poll before Cygnus is ready to go ahead and depart from that 250-meter hold onto the next milestone.
Station Houston on 2 for Cygnus. Cygnus and ISS are configured for approach inside the keep-out sphere. Expect approach to resume shortly and stand by for the Cygnus PCS command checkout.
Station copies.
Station Houston on 2. Cygnus has resumed approach. Go for Cygnus PCS command checkout. Hold arm per step 3 in 1.102.
Copy, go for step 3 and 1.102.
We have confirmation that Cygnus has left the hold, heading toward the next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point just after crossing the keep-out sphere. You'll hear Capcom Steven Zenter continue the readouts, going through a checklist that the crew on board the station also has, working together for these operations for capture of Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo vehicle to the International Space Station today.
Houston Station on 2, hold command is armed.
Houston copies. In Jessica, we have hold arm confirmed. Go for Cygnus PCS command checkout disarm per step 4.
Copy, go for disarm step 4. Houston Station on 2 for Cygnus, step 4, hold command is disarmed.
Houston copies. And Station Houston on 2. Cygnus PCS command checkout was successful. Begin monitoring approach from 250 meters per step 5 and 1.102.
Copy, go for step 5.
Just to recap so far, Cygnus has departed the 250-meter hold point and is headed to the next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. We'll continue to get views as Cygnus approaches the International Space Station, carrying about 7,500 pounds of vehicle hardware, crew supplies, science, and research.
Station Houston on 2. Cygnus is inside the 200-meter keep-out sphere. You now have authority to issue an abort if no comm with MCCH, and the light is outside the corridor.
Station copies.
And you just heard that call from Capcom Steven Zenter, letting the crew on board the station know that Cygnus is now inside the keep-out sphere, or the neighborhood of the space station, and a good readout called back from NASA astronaut Jessica Meir.
Houston Station on 2 for Block Bravo.
We're ready for Block Bravo.
Both monitors 1 and 3, the light is inside the corridor. The vehicle size matches the outline. The light is about a vehicle width port of the circle. And correction, the light is a vehicle width starboard of the circle. And the circle is a vehicle width port of the center of the corridor.
We copy. Good report.
Taking another look from what's called the Cuckoo Workstation. It's a workstation on board the International Space Station, and this is a view from a camera pointing toward that workstation. This is the telemetry data that's being fed to the International Space Station now, where NASA astronauts Drew Morgan and Jessica Meir are viewing this and monitoring the final approach this morning. Again, Cygnus has departed that 250-meter hold point on its way to the International Space Station and is headed to the next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. We'll continue to get views as Cygnus approaches the International Space Station, carrying about 7,500 pounds of vehicle hardware, crew supplies, science, and research. Within that cargo is 2,129 pounds of science investigations. Cygnus is now sitting about 120 meters away from the International Space Station on its way to that next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. Once Cygnus arrives to the 30-meter hold point, the crew will have the option to turn off the orientation lights, and mission control teams in Dulles will perform state of health checks on the Cygnus vehicle. This 30-meter hold point is basically the stopping point to verify everything is in the green and looks good before it makes its final approach to the International Space Station for capture this morning. The International Space Station and Cygnus now in an orbital nighttime, flying 268 statute miles above the Pacific Ocean. And Cygnus is now just under about 100 meters from the International Space Station on its way to that next milestone, which is the 30-meter hold point. This cargo resupply mission started 3 days ago when Cygnus launched atop an Antares 230-plus rocket Saturday, February 15th at 2:21 p.m. Central from Pad 0A at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. At the time of launch, the International Space Station was flying 258 statute miles over the western Pacific, and about an hour later, solar arrays were deployed and Cygnus continued its journey to the International Space Station. Cygnus is now just under 80 meters away from the International Space Station on its final trek there for its arrival. Again, Cygnus is approaching the 30-meter hold point, which is the next milestone. The 30-meter hold point is a very important milestone because the next one will be the arrival of Cygnus at the capture point about 10 to 12 meters from the International Space Station.